A single sheet of paper. Not a weapon. Not a treaty. Not a field commander's order. A sheet of paper, printed in Budapest in the summer of 1946, carrying a denomination that had never appeared on any currency in any language in recorded history. 100 millió milpengő. 100 million milpengő. 10 to the power of 20. By the time that note reached circulation, it could not buy a postage stamp. By the time the ink was dry, the number printed on it was already becoming fiction. This is not a story about the Second World War, though the war is why it happened. It is not a story about Soviet occupation, though occupation is the frame inside which it unfolded. It is not a story about incompetent men making catastrophic choices, though some of the choices were catastrophic. It is the story of what happens when a government decides, methodically, with full awareness of what the mathematics requires, that paper, printed fast enough, can substitute for an economy that no longer exists. Hungary's hyperinflation of 1946 is the most extreme monetary collapse in documented human history, not the most famous, not the one most people cite when this subject comes up, but the most extreme. The numbers Hungary produced between August 1945 and July 1946 were not comparable to Weimar Germany's. They were not even in the same mathematical category. Weimar Germany's total currency devaluation, 1 trillion to 1. Hungary's, 400 octillion to 1. 4 times 10 to the power of 29. The difference between those two figures is 100 quadrillion. That number does not fit on most calculators. What it took to get there is a story worth understanding precisely. To understand how a country arrives at a number that doesn't fit on a calculator, you have to start before the war. The pengő was introduced in 1925 as a deliberate act of reconstruction. Hungary's previous currency, the wartime krone, had inflated into worthlessness after the First World War. One casualty among many, alongside 2/3 of Hungary's territory, which the Treaty of Trianon transferred to neighboring states. The pengő was designed to be different. It was disciplined. It was indexed against international standards. It carried the credibility of a government that understood what a ruined currency had cost. For nearly 2 decades, it held. In 1939, $1 bought 5 pengő. That was a credible rate for a mid-tier European economy with functioning institutions. Budapest in the late 1930s was a city of coffee houses and trams, and an opera house that drew audiences from across Central Europe. The pengő was money in the way that money is supposed to be money, a stable medium through which people made plans, accumulated savings, and imagined futures. Then Germany annexed Austria. Then Czechoslovakia was partitioned. Then Poland fell in 18 days. Hungary, positioned at the intersection of competing great power pressures, spent the early war years in a deteriorating calculation about which side to appease, which alliance to survive, and which terms to accept. The terms that arrived, ultimately, were unconditional. The battle for Budapest lasted over 100 days. The siege of Budapest, which the Red Army began encircling in late December 1944 and concluded on February 13, 1945, was one of the most destructive urban battles of the Second World War. Every bridge across the Danube had been destroyed, not by Allied bombing, but by retreating German forces who blew the Chain Bridge and the Elizabeth Bridge and the Margaret Bridge as they withdrew. Structures that had defined the city for generations, reduced to twisted steel and collapsed masonry in the river below. Industrial output across Hungary fell to roughly 1/4 of pre-war levels. Agricultural production was disrupted. The National Bank of Hungary held less than $20 million in foreign reserves. And the provisional government that emerged in the spring of 1945 inherited an obligation it had no capacity to meet: $300 million in war reparations owed to the Soviet Union. not payable in paper, but in goods, in food, in industrial output, in the physical products of a Hungarian economy that barely existed, payable quarterly, beginning immediately. The provisional government faced a choice that was not really a choice. Hungary had no foreign credit. No institution in 1945 was extending loans to a newly occupied state with collapsed production and a $300 million reparations liability. The tax base had largely ceased to function. In an economy where labor was often exchanged for food rather than wages, where many businesses had been destroyed or occupied, and where people were trading salvage from bomb sites, collecting taxes in a stable currency was close to impossible. Civil servants needed to be paid. Food distribution infrastructure needed to be funded. The Soviet occupation administration expected the Hungarian state to cover certain administrative costs. The National Bank began printing. In August 1945, Hungary's monthly inflation rate reached 3,000%. The government's internal position, as reflected in financial communications from that period, was that the inflation was temporary. The reconstruction was underway. Agricultural output would recover by autumn. Once the economy was producing again, the pressure on the printing press would ease. The presses would slow. The presses did not slow. Monthly inflation in October 1945 reached 12,000%. By December, it was 130,000%. Between 75 and 80% of the Hungarian government's 1945 to 1946 fiscal budget was funded directly by the National Bank printing new currency, not as a bridge measure while other financing was arranged. As the primary instrument of a sovereign state's public finance for an entire year, the pengő was not a currency that happened to be inflating. It was the mechanism by which the government paid its bills. Every bill. For months. By January 1946, the mathematics had become self-defeating. The pengő was losing value faster than the presses could produce new denominations to account for it. A note worth 100,000 pengő was obsolete before it reached the shops. The government's printers were issuing bills of increasing surreality. 1 million pengő, 10 million, 100 million, and each denomination was functionally worthless before the ink dried. In January 1946, the government introduced a parallel currency. The adópengő, the tax pengő, was not a replacement for the regular pengő. It was issued alongside it, as a unit of account stable enough to anchor transactions while the underlying currency continued its collapse. The adópengő had its own exchange rate against the regular pengő, set by official government decree each morning and broadcast on state radio so that businesses could adjust their prices before opening. In January 1946, one adópengő equaled 500 regular pengő. By April, 2 million. By June, 2 trillion. 2 currencies, 1 country. Neither of them stable. Businesses posted prices in adópengő because the adópengő at least moved in a direction that could be predicted. Wages were negotiated in adópengő and then converted at the morning's official rate when paid. A parallel economy nested inside the collapse of the official one. A ghost currency keeping daily transactions alive while the real currency accelerated toward zero. Before we get to the final number, the number that makes Weimar Germany's hyperinflation look like a rounding error, you need to understand what this inflation felt like from the inside. What it cost an ordinary factory worker in Budapest in June 1946 to hold wages from Monday morning to Friday afternoon, because the mathematics is extraordinary. But the mathematics was lived by people. Workers at the factories on Csepel Island, at the Manfred Weiss Steelworks, the largest industrial facility in Hungary, began demanding wages by the hour, not by the week, not by the day, by the hour. Because the difference in purchasing power between wages received at the start of a shift and wages received at the end was no longer theoretical. It was measurable in meals. Workers who waited until the end of the week to spend their wages could not buy what they could have bought on Monday with the same paper. The only rational response was to spend the moment wages were received. Workers sent family members to the market immediately, converting paper into food, into coal, into anything with mass and durability. Holding currency overnight was a documented losing proposition. Shopkeepers abandoned the practice of setting prices in the morning and holding them through the day. They chalked updated numbers continuously, on boards at market stalls, on slips of paper pinned to goods on shelves. A shopper who paused to decide might return a few minutes later to find the price had changed. Not by a trivial amount, by enough to matter. The Hungarian Postal Service issued a stamp with a face value of 500,000 pengő. By the time that stamp reached post offices across the country, the denomination was insufficient to mail a letter. So the stamp was overprinted, first with 1 billion pengő, then with 5 billion. The Postal Service was overprinting its own stamps to keep pace with what its stamps were worth. Prices were doubling every 15 hours. A loaf of bread that cost 1,000 pengő at 8 in the morning cost approximately 1,375 pengő by dinner time. Not because bread had become more valuable, because the paper had become less so. Every hour, a little more. Every morning, a new exchange rate on the radio. Every afternoon, chalk on a board. In July 1946, the National Bank of Hungary printed denominations for which it had to invent new mathematical vocabulary. The milpengő, 1 million pengő. The B-pengő, 1 trillion pengő, 10 to the power of 12. The milpengő, 1 million billion pengő, 10 to the power of 18. And then the note that required a word Hungary had never placed on currency. The 100 millió bilpengő, 100 million bilpengő, 10 to the power of 20. The highest denomination banknote ever issued in the history of any currency anywhere in the world. It was printed in July 1946. By the time it circulated, it could not buy a postage stamp. For scale, Weimar Germany's hyperinflation, the one most people know, produced a total devaluation factor of 1 trillion, 10 to the power of 12. That number is already beyond ordinary human intuition. If you tried to count to 1 trillion at one number per second, it would take 31,000 years. Hungary's total devaluation factor was 4 times 10 to the power of 29. The difference between 10 to the power of 12 and 4 times 10 to the power of 29 is not a difference of degree. It is a factor of 100 quadrillion. If you had held 1938 pengő, a single coin from a stable pre-war year, and wished to preserve its original purchasing power through to August 1946, you would have needed 400 octillion pengő to do it. Written as a number, 4, followed by 29 zeros. That is not a figure that fits on most calculators. It does not correspond to any intuition a human being normally develops about quantity. It corresponds to 14 months of a government paying its bills with paper. Monthly inflation at the July 1946 peak, 4.19 times 10 to the power of 16%, 41.9 quadrillion %, in a single month. On August 1st, 1946, the Hungarian government introduced the forint, the official conversion rate set by government decree. 1 forint equaled 4 times 10 to the power of 29 pengő. All existing pengő, every note in every wallet, every balance in every surviving bank account, every stack of paper in every drawer of every household in Hungary, were converted at that rate. The pengő was abolished by law. The aggregate value of all pengő in circulation on August 1st, 1946, converted to US dollars at the prevailing exchange rate, was less than 1,000th of a cent. The entire monetary stock of a nation of 9 million people, less than a fraction of a cent. The presses that had run continuously for 14 months were stopped. The forint was backed by something physical. The National Bank of Hungary held 38 kilograms of gold, a reserve Hungary had managed to reclaim after the war through months of diplomatic negotiation with the Allied powers, who had secured it as the conflict ended. 38 kilograms of metal. That was the foundation. 14 months of monetary financing, of an entire government running its public expenditure through a printing press, replaced, on a single day, by 38 kilograms of gold. Within 2 years, Hungary's annual inflation rate was in single digits. The forint stabilized. Trade resumed. The reconstruction that the government had said in August 1945 was already underway. It finally was. The printing press was still there. It still ran. But it ran within limits. The rules about when it was permitted to start had changed. The forint is still Hungary's currency today. 78 years after it replaced the wreckage of the pengő, it remains legal tender. The law governing the National Bank of Hungary until 2011 explicitly prohibited the bank from directly financing government spending. The prohibition was written into statute. A legal scar. The encoded residue of what 14 months had cost. The printing press did not disappear in August 1946. It never does. Every central bank in the world operates one, in one form or another. The difference, the only difference, is the rule about when it is permitted to run. The sheet of paper we began with, the 100 million milpengő note, dated July 1946, carrying a denomination that required mathematical vocabulary invented for the occasion, is now a collector's item. You can buy one. They are not rare. There were a great many of them. They sell at auction for somewhere between $15 and $40, depending on condition, which is considerably more than they were worth in July 1946. Every pengő printed between August 1945 and July 1946 represented a transfer, not a tax, which requires a vote, not a loan, which requires a creditor. A transfer, silent, mathematical, requiring no announcement and leaving no visible mechanism, from the savings of those who held the currency to the spending of those who controlled the press, from workers whose wages lost meaning between Monday and Friday, from pensioners whose savings dissolved without a decree, from merchants who accepted paper in the morning and found it worth less by afternoon, to government salaries, to reparations payments, to the costs of a state running on borrowed time and printed money. The mechanism was invisible. The result was not. A single sheet of paper. A number that doesn't fit on calculators. A country that still uses the currency introduced to replace it. When does printing money stop being a solution and become the mechanism by which the problem is transferred to someone else? Hungary answered that question. The answer is printed on every note they issued between August 1945 and July 1946. The answer is the number they had to invent new words to write.